Oh hey, it's an animated movie about a cute little unicorn. Oh, this movie should be cute and cuddly. There shouldn't be anything wrong with this. Hey, wait a minute. Did I just hear that character use language? And, what's up with that triple-breasted harpy? Caution. The following video is an in-depth review of the movie I'm currently reviewing, which means that there will be massive spoilers in the review. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then please feel free to watch this movie first before watching this video. However, if you have already seen this movie, or you just want to know my thoughts on this movie, then keep watching. The Last Unicorn was another movie that I had reviewed very early on with my movie reviews. I have always wanted to go back and revisit this movie again because I felt that I didn't say enough about this film early on. Also, this film is a lot more complex than I remember, and it would be great to see how my perspective about those themes explored in this film has changed over the years. So before I go into what I liked and hated about this film, I would like to give out a brief summary of this film. The movie starts off with a beautiful unicorn thinking that she is the last of her kind. One day, however, a butterfly comes by and tells the unicorn that she is actually not the last of her kind. It turns out that a man named King Haggard has kidnapped all the unicorns by using the Red Bull to take the unicorns to his castle. It was then that the unicorn decided to go on a journey to rescue the other unicorns from King Haggard's clutches. Along the way, the unicorn is captured by Mommy Fortuna, a witch lady who kidnaps innocent animals and uses them in her sideshow. It was then that the unicorn meets a magician named Smitrick, who eventually helps the unicorn escape from Mommy Fortuna and accompanies her on her journey. Afterwards, Smitrick and the unicorn meet up with a spirited woman named Molly, who was once a part of Captain Cully's crew, but decided to leave them to go with Smitrick and the unicorn. But when the three companions make it to King Haggard's castle, they are attacked by the Red Bull. As the Red Bull attacks the unicorn, Smitrick is forced to transform the unicorn to a human being in order to save the unicorn from the Red Bull. Even though this causes distress for the unicorn, the three are able to get inside the castle to meet King Haggard and his adopted son Prince Lear. Now Molly, the unicorn, and Smitrick have to find a way to rescue the other unicorns while preventing King Haggard from learning the unicorn's true identity. I was familiar with Rankin works in the past, like their work on the popular Christmas classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and their later work on the action animated series Thundercats. So imagine my surprise when I found out that Rankin had worked on an epic fantasy animated film that has a lot of adult themes. I never would have expected that from Rankin, especially after being exposed to the numerous Christmas specials that they had created over the years. But thankfully, this turned out to be an enjoyable experience for me, as The Last Unicorn was one of the few animated films during the 1980s to contain adult content despite the G rating. Don't worry, I'll talk about how ridiculous that was later on. I must admit that when I first heard about this movie, I thought that it was going to be a cute and cuddly film about cute unicorns prancing around with rainbows in the background. But nope. When I sat down and watched this movie, I realized that this isn't My Little Pony, and yes, the My Little Pony franchise did exist way back in the 1980s. This was actually a deep and complex film about the ups and downs of being an immortal, finding your place in the world, and going through an identity crisis. It also explores about how human emotions can be complicated to not only regular humans, but to immortal beings as well. Now, that's a lot of mature topics to talk about in a supposed children's film. I say supposed because not only are there a lot of mature themes in this movie that most children wouldn't grasp at such a young age, but there is also some language in this film, which I'll discuss more about later on. There are many different themes in this movie that I want to explore, but since each character represents a different theme that is being explored in this film, it would be much easier for me to just talk about the characters. So let's explore each character and the different themes that they each represent in this film. The unicorn was a very interesting character in this movie. She is portrayed as being cheerful or bubbly like you would expect from most unicorn characters, but is portrayed as an immortal being who doesn't understand the core concepts of human emotions. Because of this, the unicorn seems to have a cold and distant personality. Whenever something tragic happens in the story, the unicorn seems to not care about the well-beings of the other people, which was best portrayed in a scene where the harpy kills Mommy Fortuna and the unicorn acted so nonchalant about the whole situation, when any human being would have been terrified out of their minds at seeing such brutality. It wasn't until the unicorn was forcibly transformed into a human being by Smitrick in order to escape the Red Bull that the unicorn started experiencing emotions. The film did a fantastic job of showing us how the unicorn, now known as Lady Amalthea, in order to prevent King Haggar from knowing her true identity, is having a hard time trying to sort through her emotions. She often has trouble confessing her feelings for Prince Lear, since he never had experienced love before and doesn't know how to reciprocate those feelings. Human emotions can be complicated. One minute you are happy, and then the next minute you are either angry or sad. Emotions can come out of us without any warning, and the unicorn starts going through that once she becomes a human. She also has to deal with losing her true identity once she becomes a human. The reason why the unicorn came to King Haggard's castle in the first place was because she wanted to rescue the other unicorns from his clutches. But the longer the unicorn stays as a human, the more she starts forgetting about her true identity. It got so bad that when the unicorn escapes from King Haggard's castle towards the end of the film, with some help from Smitrick, Molly, and Prince Lear, she starts saying that she wanted to be with Prince Lear forever, even if that means that she would never become a unicorn again. This shows how much the unicorn had changed over the course of the film, as she starts falling in love with Prince Lear, when before she never really cared about him. So now that I talked a bit about the unicorn herself, I would like to talk about love interest Prince Lear. Now, I will admit that Prince Lear was mostly in this movie as a love interest to the unicorn, and that there wasn't that much to his character. However, he does play an interesting role in this film, as he was the one who shows the unicorn what true emotions are all about when he falls in love with the humanized unicorn. I also like the small character development that he goes through, as while he isn't an evil person, it seems like he didn't quite grasp the true meaning of love. When he first fell in love with Lady Amalthea, he spends most of his time trying to impress her with his heroic feats, which just didn't interest her. It wasn't until he just started talking to her and getting to know her that she starts to have feelings for him and he starts to understand her better. However, towards the end of the film, Prince Lear soon realizes that he has to sacrifice his love for Lady Amalthea in order for her to turn back into a unicorn and rescue the other unicorns. This shows how much Prince Lear had matured as a character throughout the story and how he understands what it means to be a true hero, even if it means that he has to sacrifice his own happiness to do the right thing in the end. Now let's talk about another interesting character in this film, Smitrick the Magician. Smitrick was probably my most favorite character in this film, as he not only provided a bit of comic relief in this film, but he also represented the character who is trying to find his place in the world. Smitrick spends most of the movie trying to prove to everyone that he is a great magician, despite the fact that he keeps on messing up his magic spells. It wasn't until the moment where he successfully transforms the unicorn into a human being in order to save her from the Red Bull that we start seeing a slow progression in his powers. We also start to see that Smitrick starts to lose a bit of interest in becoming the world's greatest magician when he makes it his priority to protect the humanized unicorn from King Haggard. It shows how Smitrick is maturing as a character, and it seems that the more mature that Smitrick gets, the more powerful his magic becomes. Another interesting character that I wanted to talk about, and probably one of the most complex characters in the story, is Molly Grew herself. Molly Grew was a pretty interesting character to me because she seems to be a very mysterious character, as we don't know much about her backstory. We don't know how she got with Captain Cully in the first place, or what her deal was with the unicorn when she first meets her. Oh, and speaking of Molly's "Where have you been" ran against the unicorn, was I the only one at the time who didn't understand what she was talking about? I'm pretty sure a lot of little kids in the audience were asking their parents, "Mom? Dad? Why is that lady yelling at that unicorn? And what does she mean when she said, 'How dare you come to me now when I am this?'" I didn't get what Molly was saying during that scene when I first saw this movie. Have she and the unicorn met each other in the past, and were they best friends or something? I actually had to look the scene up to see what Molly was getting at, and when I did, I realized it was another case of putting some adult content into a children's film. What I mean by this is that if you look up what unicorn lore is all about, you'll notice it has something to do with virginity. That's right, another children's movie that deals with the subject of virginity. The first was Hocus Pocus, which actually said the word virgin. The fun with that is having the kids in the audience trying to figure out what the word virgin means. Here, the movie never said the word virgin, but if you know your unicorn lore, you would still find it shocking that they even mentioned this in a supposed children's movie. I also like the fact that Molly tried to help the unicorn adjust to her new identity, as it shows that she does care for the unicorn. We also get to see a bit of character development Molly during these moments, as she becomes a much kinder person once she is near the unicorn. Molly's relationship with Smitrick was interesting to say the least. It seems like the two of them spent most of the movie bickering with each other, especially with dealing with the unicorn situation. However, there were several moments in the film where they do care about each other, and they even get together with each other at the end of the movie. And now I'd like to talk about probably the most interesting villain on the big screen, King Haggard. King Haggard is the one who caused the main conflict in the film by making the Red Bull kidnap all the unicorns in the land and bring them to his castle. This in turn causes the last unicorn to search for the other unicorns, starting up the plot. King Haggard was a very interesting villain because he didn't kidnap the unicorns for power or fame. He kidnapped them because he was unhappy with his life, and unicorns were the only things in the world that made him happy. This actually made me really curious about how long King Haggard has been unhappy with his life. He had mentioned that he had adopted Prince Lear and that he was briefly happy when he had a son of his own. But then that happiness went away rather quickly, and he doesn't seem to get much enjoyment out of having Prince Lear around. So, what was it that King Haggard liked about the unicorns? Was he mesmerized by their beauty, or did he like the fact that they were magical creatures? Also, I'm curious about how he was able to obtain the Red Bull in the first place. Was the Red Bull another mythical creature that King Haggard kidnapped and forced into servitude to him? The film never really explained about how King Haggard got the Red Bull in the first place. Another aspect of the film that I was intrigued with was how it managed to deconstruct the concept of fairy tales. So in fairy tales, you have the usual setup. A dashy prince who's out to save the damsel in distress, and everybody lives happily ever after, the end. Not so in this movie. While the movie's ending wasn't quite that bleak, and things still turned out alright for the remaining characters, Prince Lear and Lady Amalthea ultimately do not end up together. This is because Lady Amalthea is actually a unicorn, and since unicorns are incapable of feeling emotions, that would mean that she would forget about her feelings for Prince Lear. There was actually a scene in the movie where the characters were discussing about what they were going to do once they confront the Red Bull. It was at this moment that Lady Amalthea was falling in love with Prince Lear, and it got to the point where she didn't want to become a unicorn again because that would mean that she would lose Prince Lear forever. However, Prince Lear tells Lady Amalthea that as a hero, he needs to let things happen when they need to happen. Which means that even though he will lose Lady Amalthea once she changes back into a unicorn, he knows that she needs to change back in order to save the other unicorns. This actually shows how much Prince Lear had matured as a character and how he's willing to sacrifice his own happiness in order for the unicorns to regain their freedom again. I was also interested in the conversation between Smitrick and Molly about happy endings in general. Molly asked Smitrick what would happen if there is no happy ending regarding Prince Lear's statement about happy endings not coming in the middle of the story. Smitrick then answers that there are no happy endings because nothing ends. I actually agree with this statement because, well, life doesn't really end for anyone unless you died or something like that. Other aspects that I liked about this film were the animation and the music. I was actually surprised that the movie's main theme song was performed by the pop group America, even though as a 90s baby, I don't know much about the pop group America. The main theme song really captured the magic and mystery of this movie, and it proves that, yeah, pop artists can make beautiful music for a movie. The animation was quite superb for its time, with the characters moving around smoothly throughout each frame. Probably the best bit of animation in this movie was involving the unicorn herself, as she is the most graceful moving character in the entire movie. Now let's move on to some of the issues that I have with this movie, and to be honest, it's not really that much. I had mentioned in my original review that I felt that the pacing of this movie was a bit slow in some scenes. There were a couple of scenes where the characters' conversations with each other would go on too long. Now, while I do enjoy the occasional long-winded conversations between the characters in the film, especially the ones in a Quentin Tarantino film, sometimes the conversations would slow down the film for me, and my mind would just end up wandering at times. Also, there were a couple of cases where the film didn't really flesh out a character's backstory. Like, for example, I would have liked to know more about Molly and Smitrick's backstories before they met the unicorn. Like, how did Smitrick met up with Mommy Fortuna in the first place? Or how did Molly meet up with Captain Cully, and is she his wife or something? Judging by Molly's rant towards the unicorn later on in the film, I'm assuming that she is Captain Cully's wife. Probably? The Last Unicorn was rated G, and as promised, this is the part where I start ranting about how ridiculous it was giving this film that rating. The Last Unicorn came out in 1982, which was during the time when animation wasn't quite taken that seriously. It seems like that no matter how much sex, violence, and language an animated film has, if it's animated, that is automatically rated G. This is despite the fact that this film has some language, especially with the usage of the word hell, and it also has some partial nudity. Oh god, that big-breasted tree. If this movie was re-rated, then it probably would have gotten a light PG for the reasons that I just stated. Originally, I had given The Last Unicorn a score of an 8.9 out of 10, but since then, I had started to notice just how complex this movie really was. So I decided to bump the score up to a 9 out of 10. The film did a fantastic job exploring the complex themes of immortality and what it means to have human emotions. It was also one of the best deconstructions of the fairy tale genre ever done on the big screen. Many of the deconstructions that this film had done, like stating that there are no happy endings, still resonated with me. Even though the pacing of this film was a bit slow at times, The Last Unicorn is definitely one of the most relatable fantasy films that I have ever seen and had set a standard for mature storytelling in animated films. Hope you enjoyed my review of The Last Unicorn. Hey guys, like this video? Then please feel free to hit that like button. And also, hit that subscribe button for more content about video games, movies, and TV shows from this channel. And now, let's roll the credits, please.